Talk Show. Recorded live.
Hello and welcome to the Castle of Horror interview segment where we talk to writers and creators of today's genre worlds. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, author of the book The Iron Thane, an epic in the world of Shakespeare's Macbeth from Wordfire Press. This week we're talking to Katherine Hall Page, the author of the new book, The Body in the Wardrobe, which features an empowering female duo, longtime favorite part-time sleuth Faith Fairchild. And we're going to hear all about that series alongside new series favorite Sophie Maxwell, last seen in the book, The Body in the Birches. Page is the author of 22 previous Faith Fairchild mysteries, the first of which received the Agatha Award for Best First Mystery. The Body in the Snowdrift was honored with the Agatha Award for Best Novel in 2006. Page also won an Agatha for her short story, The Would-Be Widower, the recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award at Malice Domestic. She has been nominated for the Edgar Award, the Mary Higgins Clark Award, and the McCavity Award. She lives in Massachusetts and Maine with her husband. Welcome, Katherine. It's so good to talk to you.
Oh, Jason, great to be here.
I'm really excited. This is going to be a fun conversation.
It is. I believe in castles of horror. I mean, absolutely. I'm there.
Excellent. I was wondering if you could start us off with a reading, and I think a good one would be Chapter 3, the beginning of Chapter 3 up to the end of the second paragraph on page, so starting on page 45, going to the end of the second paragraph on 46.
Okay.
Go crazy.
Okay, and people need to visualize a wardrobe such as would have been in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, that kind of armoire type thing in which it is not impossible to imagine a very large person in that wardrobe. So here's Chapter 3. Not moving at all, and neither was Sophie. Her limbs were frozen in place as she stared down at the man, a dark shape against the rich colors of the oriental carpet on the floor. It was impossible to believe. A body in the wardrobe? She opened her mouth, took a deep breath, but couldn't make a sound. And then, as if a starter's gun had gone off, she tore down the stairs and found herself in the kitchen, staring at a door she knew was locked, just as all the doors were. Her phone. She looked down at her bare legs. The phone was in the bedroom. She'd taken it out of her skirt, the skirt she was about to hang in the wardrobe where the dead man had been, waiting for her to open the door. Think, Sophie, think. She snatched the landline receiver from the counter, punching in 911, turned the lock, and wrenched the door open, stumbling out into the cool night air. Relief started to flood over her until she realized the killer could be hiding behind the stacks of lumber and bags of cement that filled the garden at the back of the house. Quickly, she darted to the path surrounding the house and the gate beyond. She pushed down on the handle. It opened easily. There was no front yard, only a small patch of ivy with a cast-iron planter at the foot of the stairs leading to the front door. Gloria had filled the urn with red cyclamen, evergreens, and pine cones. Sophie moved across to the square and stood under a streetlight. No cars were passing and no one was on the sidewalks, although lights were on in most of the houses. Her call was picked up. Listening to the voice on the other end saying, "This call is being recorded," Sophie struggled to clear her throat, finally managing to gasp out, "There's a dead man in my bedroom. He's been stabbed."
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I love that because it was a really good sequence where you're both showing action, you're giving a little bit of the mystery of the actual book so the listeners can hear that, but also you've got a lot of sort of the descriptive passages, to give you an idea of how the book reads. Can you tell me? So who are Sophie Maxwell?
Who are these people? Yeah, poor Sophie Maxwell. Sophie Maxwell is in her, she's probably in her late 20s, and she is a newlywed. And in The Body in the Birches, where she first appears in the last book, she is suffering from a broken heart, a horrible cad, and someone that she has given up all for love, and it is. So she's on the coast of Maine, on this fictitious island, Santerre Island, where her Faith Fairchild is in the summer. And the two of them kind of joined forces to solve the mystery and the murder in that book. I mean, the books are strewn with bodies. I remember asking my editor, Ruth Cavan, years and years ago after book 3 that, how were readers going to believe that this Faith Fairchild kept stumbling across bodies? And she said, Katherine, it's fiction. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah, what's the answer to that question? Because Faith Fairchild is your main character. And
yeah, she is. And she has
this. Like Jessica Fletcher, she basically wanders across bodies.
Yeah.
Is that just the universe of the cozy mystery? Is first of all, is that an offensive term? Are these cozy mysteries, or is that what you call them?
Well, I'm at the point in life where you could essentially call me pretty much anything you want. But the term cozy mystery first appeared in an essay by Raymond Chandler, in which he, in the 1950s, in which he was denigrated these cozy mysteries in which more tea was spilt than blood. So it was, it was a kind of for many, many years. I mean, I think a lot of us prefer traditional mystery and so forth, but, publishers like to have labels. And also, I mean, people know what they're going to get. If it says cozy mystery, they know, it's going to be suspense, all of the other things, but you're not going to have, a dismembered corpse. So. Right. Or not too graphic.
And I'm sure that there's gradations in there, but yeah, when I think of it, I think of, this is going to be probably a series, probably about an amateur sleuth who stumbles across bodies and using cleverness and a series of reoccurring characters from book to book to get to know. I mean, that's the coziness of it, is that, you pick up the next book and there's a lot of the same characters that you knew before.
Yeah, I kind of think of them as an ensemble troupe, almost, as in the theater. And that's been one of the joys about writing this series, which I did not realize. I wrote, my husband took a sabbatical, and I had been intending to, go back into the field of education where I'd been, but I was in France. I had great daycare. I had a 2-year-old, and I wrote the book that had been in my head that I'd always wanted to have the time. I thought, I'm never going to get this time again. And I wrote it. French Friends Love Me in Old Underwood. Think of the front page. Yeah. And I wrote the book, and then when we got back, I saw a little ad in a writer's publication. I blithely sent it off to this agent, and she acquired me and sold it right away. Who knew? And then that's when the editor, Ruth Cavan at St. Martin's Press, said, when can we expect the next in the series? And I thought, all right. So let's keep going with this character and her family. And people come and go. Like Sophie, was in the last book, this book. I don't know if she'll keep going. But I like the pairing of the two because they're very similar people. And Sophie is, the body she finds in the wardrobe is in Savannah, Georgia. She's from the north. It's a kind of really different life for her. She marries a guy from Savannah, and there she is. And Faith did the same thing in the first book. She moved from Manhattan, where she'd grown up, to New England. So they kind of have this outsider perspective, which I like.
So you get to kind of repeat some of these themes from the early books, again with a new character, but with your original character as a sort of mentor.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, exactly. And I don't know whether age brings wisdom, but at least age brings age. So there's Faith all ready to kind of cast a glance on things.
Well, no, but that can be a lot of fun. I mean,
it is.
You especially when you get to see characters grow. Like this is a silly example, but I always liked to watch Trapper John M.D., right, which was a show long time ago about.
That was a great show.
It was a good show, yeah. Parnell Roberts, I guess, but they initially. Trapper, since he's been a young character, by the time of that show, he's an older character, and so they've introduced Gonzo, and the whole point is to have Trapper sort of see his own insouciance from the eyes of an older character, and that's it's priceless. Yeah. It's so neat to see the character that way.
Like had I but known, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But that's remarkable. So, how do you know when you're writing a character like you're doing the last book and you introduce Sophie Maxwell? How do you know when she's going to become a lead? Is it a matter of your editor says, I want the next book and make sure you have that character in it? Or
no, it's the kind of in this book I wrote. In all the books I have. Since the fifth book, I put an author's note at the end where I kind of step from behind the curtain. And in this book, I explained that, I just really kept wanting to write about Sophie and about somebody at that point in her life. And I really wanted to write, because it's become a very long series, I alternate the books with this fictitious town west of Boston, Aylford. That's where Faith ends up in these, leaves the Big Apple for the more bucolic orchards, and she's New England. She's a caterer, and boiled dinners are not her thing. She's been in glitzy Manhattan, and she's a minister's wife, and she's the daughter and granddaughter of clergy, and she didn't want that fishbowl existence. So she's sort of, things are a little bit from especially rocky, those first few books over the course of time. And so here's Sophie. I just wanted to write about Sophie kind of being in Savannah, and and she loves it, but she's got these kind of difficult in-laws who are not too happy to have had this Yankee snap up this eligible guy.
And are you familiar with Savannah? Is this
the whole thing about Savannah was that I had a really good friend of mine moved down there a couple of years ago, and I'd never been there. And in the author's note, I talk about that. I fall in love so easily. So many people recorded that, and I just fell in love with Savannah, with the place and the food and the people. I mean, people smile at you and say, "How you doing?" As you walk down the street. So I was, I went down to see Meg. We all went down to see Meg, especially in the winter. And I thought, well, okay, this can be one of the Someplace Else books, because there's the Aylford books, and then the next place is Someplace Else, to kind of give, a freshness to the series.
Sure.
Make it a little different.
Wow. So, I was wondering, another thing is, reviewers have remarked, like, your minor characters always tend to be colorful, and maybe that's because you'll discover a new city and so forth. And that's one of that strikes me as one of the challenges, of writing a mystery is you're gonna do, the sleuth has to go get information. They need to go talk to a lifeguard at the pool. They got to go talk to the druggist. They got to go talk to a bartender, whatever. And how do you approach it every book, going, boy, how do I make this lifeguard interesting? How do I make this?
And that's the best description of writing that I've ever seen was a sentence from Madeleine L'Engle, who wrote A Wrinkle in Time. She called, I love that book, and you would love it too, of course. She wrote that for her, writing was like taking dictation from her imagination. So I don't have any real people in my books, but there might be little bits and pieces of people that I meet along the way, or things that I've read that I think are funny, or things that are funny or odd in the newspaper. And that's the way it is with the characters, even the minor characters. They become this, but they take on a reality when you're writing. I mean, even the most minor character, I can picture in my head. So, maybe
that's the answer, is as long as you can picture them being a real person, and that'll bring in the necessary angles and flaws that otherwise you might be inclined to leave out.
Yeah.
You have to just lean forward, if I understand it correctly, and remind yourself to open up your mind and think, like, that bartender is not just a mannequin that's going to say a few words.
My husband learned early on that I am an unabashed eavesdropper. I mean, you can't imagine what people are talking about in restaurants at the next table, and so he'll start to talk to me, and I'm going shh, shh, and I'm listening, kind of leaning over into their soup, and this also happens. This strikes a chord with women, is because we're in the ladies' room and you're in this little cubicle, and you overhear other women talking about things that you cannot believe they are talking about in public. And so, of course, I'm there just taking it all in.
Yeah, they're lucky that you're not a private investigator yourself.
Yes, I am. Yes, I would be. I think I would get too involved. But when you talk about in terms of writing a mystery novel as opposed to another novel, with the mystery novel, no matter not whether it's noir or whatever it is, you're writing about a crime. Well, not necessarily noir, because that's not so much about a puzzle mystery or solving, but you're writing about a crime that has actually occurred. So I have to cover it almost as a reporter. I have to have, all the information given to a reader about this murder or subsequent murders that have taken place. But at the same time, I don't want the reader to guess who done it on this page 3 or 4. So, you're putting up strewing the red herrings, all those proverbial red herrings. But I also have to play fair with the reader. It can't be somebody who pops up at the end who has barely been in the book. So it's those kind of, I think of them as either 2 levels or like a ski track, two ski trails. You're doing both of those things at once. And at the end, a reader should say, she gave me all the clues I should have known.
Yeah. Yeah, well, this is where it really becomes art. Is the notion that the reader has to feel it's not a pure puzzle where you don't care whether the reader.
Oh no, he cares a lot.
It's a work of art where you want the reader, to maybe even consciously not make note of clues but not put them together, and then at the end go, you got me, and be pleased about that. And yeah, that's where the art comes in, because we've seen it done well, and we've seen it done.
Yeah, and you're matching wits with the author. I mean, you just there's that. Yeah, absolutely.
You plot it all out. Like, do you have a spreadsheet where you go, the murder was committed this way for this reason? And I'm always amazed at the different ways that people write books, and particularly mysteries. I know who done it. You talked before about, an editor saying, well, have some Sophie or have some this. What I do is, and this started with that long ago with Ruth Cavan, is in the beginning I would write a really long synopsis, and that was like the skeleton. The book kind of would frame onto that, and I used to do chapter outlines and all of that kind of thing, and then write the book. And this has been the way with all my subsequent editors. Editors are just the most important people to me. Nothing I write can't be made better. So anyway, but they don't see it until it's done, all those many months later. And the book can change a lot. It's never changed in terms of who done it, but other characters appear, or more bodies, or so it's a kind of fluidity. But at the same time, I have all these notebooks. I keep a timeline. I keep track of the first and last sentences of every chapter, so that every chapter doesn't start out. And then Faith woke up and went, so right.
So and I write descriptions.
That's sort of,
yeah.
I didn't mean to. I was thinking that sounds like really good, like straight up composition writing 101 kind of advice. Keep track of where you left off last, so that your next sentence doesn't sound overly repetitive.
Yeah, or that you don't make the last sentence, too much like "and the shadow knows." Too corny. And then I start every day by rewriting what I wrote the day before, so it's kind of like a jump start for a car.
Really?
And then I print out every chapter, because I'm still sort of pencil and paper oriented, and go over that and make changes. So I don't know how many drafts I do, because it's just kind of rolling.
You're drafting all along the way. You're drafting and editing.
Yep.
That's interesting. Because I know a lot of people say, don't even go back and fix a typo until you're finished with your first draft. That
doesn't work for me, but it does work for some people. I know one, Robert B. Parker, fabulous writer.
Yeah.
He sat down every day and he just banged out X number of words and kept going, and at the end he had a book and sent it off.
Well, setting aside the corrections of yesterday that you do as you're writing a new draft, how many words or what is your goal for the new material that you're going to try?
Well, that in fact is kind of set by the genre, by the publisher. For the kind of book I write, not too long, not too short. I think it actually may even be in the contract that the top limit is 90,000 words. And I usually range around 80,000, maybe 85, and that's a kind of a good amount, I think, for to read. You can stay up all night and read that.
Sure, absolutely.
Or I can.
But I mean, as far as like your daily output, like
my daily output. Well,
somebody
depends.
says we need this book by December 1st.
Yeah.
Or what is this? This is May 9th. So
okay.
If somebody says we need a book by Labor Day.
Okay. If I am really, really cooking, I can write about maybe 2,500. Maybe even 3,000. But then again, I may. To talk a little bit about technology and the changes, one of the bad things about a computer is that cut and paste is too easy, so that it's too tempting when you go back over what you've written to try to force the square peg in a round hole by moving your paragraphs around instead of just completely deleting them and starting over. So, you really have to get rid of stuff. And
did you say 2,500 words a day?
No, that's if I'm, really, really, really in a panic. Like that's towards the very end. No.
Typically, though, if you've got a summer to write a book,
yeah,
you're gonna go. First of all, do you write at home or do you go out somewhere?
Oh no, I have a nice space to write at home, which is nice, and a dedicated space. So that's that's good. And and you really, or at least I can't write. People who say they write from 9 to 5. Some people do, but I can't. That's just too much. So.
Like different people, like Stephen King talks about. He just hits his word count, and if he hits it, he gets up and he goes off and does something else.
Yeah, I know. No, see, I don't check my word counts really. I don't check my word counts until. Maybe every couple of days I'll look, because I also have a sense of the rhythm of a chapter, and I know how long I want each chapter to be. I write pretty much it's either a 10 or 11 chapter book all the time.
Yeah.
So I kind of know where I am in all of that.
So
And
basically,
for me,
if you go out and do a session, you're going to try and do just a section of a chapter.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
How much has I was amazed to read that the original Faith Fairchild book, Belfry, came out 1990.
Yeah.
So it's now 2016.
I know.
So given that's, am I right? That's 26 years, right? So I would think that setting aside whether or not your character has aged at the well, she's aged. It's fiction, remember, Jason. So she's aged very slowly. I think she's hovered like on one or the other side of 40 for many, many books. Right.
Although her kids have gotten older.
Trisha Cornwell's novel, the character does the same thing. Basically. Yeah. She will be like forever 43.
Great. Yeah.
But how has what I'm really interested in, the technology inside the book must be vastly different. Like you were just. One thing in the section you just read, Sophie runs downstairs and it says she picked up a landline. You actually called this thing that she picked up and talked into a landline. And it occurs to me in 1990 you would probably never have called that thing a landline.
Never. And what I always say is that the cell phone is the mystery writer's worst enemy, because it's you can always get help. You can always be located, you can't, if you're locked, as in that first book, Faith gets locked into a place in somebody's basement, and of course she doesn't have a cell, and she doesn't have nobody knows where she is. She's just going to wither and die there. And and you're always reachable. So that's why I had to have Sophie, so you have to do all these complicated maneuvers to having Sophie have left the phone in her skirt pocket. And
Right. Yeah, you mentioned that. She left her phone in her skirt.
Yep.
And yeah, these are the machinations you have to go through.
You do. And I mean, it's for a lot of other technological things. It is in terms of, and in this book, her husband is, her husband is actually a private investigator, but white collar crime, not crime. And so he's on a case up in Atlanta, not all that far from Savannah, but. And she doesn't hear from him, and she's not getting any texts, and he's not answering her emails. So I had to go through all of these things about, how can she track him down, when he's off the grid.
Absolutely. Well, and now that's a source of mystery itself. If somebody's unreachable for a few days, they may as well be dead, given how easy it is to get a hold of somebody. Oh, well, here's one. Around the period of your first book, when I think of, I want to go look at newspaper articles for a paper that I'm writing in college, I would go to the public library, go down through the bowels of the place, get a nice lady to bring me some microfiche, and I would sit down at a machine and slowly scroll it around, and then an awful lot of drama came in books.
I know. That was very fun to do, actually.
Oh, yeah.
To do all that, to those reels of things and everything. I know. And then there was the card catalog with all the actual cards. And, this is an interesting little known fact. The Library of Congress still has in their storage area, all the card catalog.
Oh.
Yeah.
Even including new entries into the.
I don't know if they do any new entries, but when they switched, to the technology and to digital, one of the librarians showed me part of it. I mean, it's extraordinary.
I mean, it's a good idea, Katherine, because if something bad happens to our technology, and I need a way to find those books.
Right. Well, also think in terms of research. I do a lot of research for the book, so you won't see it in the book necessarily, but it will inform the book. The book I'm writing now concerns the production of a Broadway musical, so I'm reading biographies of producers and all sorts of stagecraft stuff and fun stuff like that. But before I would go to the library and they would laboriously try to arrange an interlibrary loan of books they didn't have. Now I can just do this all through my Minuteman Library Network. And then there's other stuff that you can Google, although it's sometimes untrustworthy. But I still do like to go to my library and just kind of go to the reference room and look stuff up and
do you continue researching even after you've started? And I guess what I'm saying is, how do you avoid the process of doing research on your new project? Well,
it's not a question of avoiding. It's a question of the research gets to be so much fun that you don't want to write the book because you're reading all this kind of cool stuff, and so you have to.
Well, how do you avoid keeping that from overwhelm or keeping you from getting started because you keep tacking?
It's again, I write to contract, and that date is circled in red, many months hence, and if I don't give them the manuscript, I don't get a check. So, so that's this is how I make my living. So it's a very powerful incentive, to say, okay, it's enough. We have enough information on obscure facts here.
Well, I mean, you could keep doing the reading. This is
I do. I've ended up getting really interested in the whole history of Savannah, and I keep reading stuff about that, and
Sure, and those things can come in this book, or they might knock around in your brain and come in a later one, and absolutely. Wow.
Yeah. But this book does have its. We were talking a little bit, castle power and being scared and being scary. I mean, I think I like to have a certain amount of suspense, and and this is a woman in peril in a way. Book because there we have Sophie alone in the Savannah townhouse, and Savannah is nicknamed the ghost city. It's there are all these terrific tales of suspense and ghosts and underground tunnels and all of that. So So
why underground?
This is a little different. This is a little different from some of the other books in terms of the element of horror.
It's such a wonderful title too, The Body in the Wardrobe. I mean, that's wonderful. All right. Well, I really appreciate you being on and taking the time to talk.
I was thrilled. I mean, again, as I can remember as we were chatting a little bit beforehand, and I can just remember that the first sensation of being absolutely terrified by something that I read, and it was Hans Christian Andersen who wrote these really scary. And the Grimm brothers, these were terrifying tales.
I mean, we were talking because my daughters, for some reason, are trying to write a musical based on Hans Christian Andersen stories, which I think sounds awesome. Although this will blow your mind. Do you know where they first learned about Hans Christian Andersen?
No.
From Father Knows Best.
Oh my gosh, really?
Father Knows Best had an episode where, for some reason, all the characters played the roles of various Hans Christian Andersen characters.
That was a very bizarre show in many ways, yes.
Yeah, well, this is the radio show, just so you understand.
Oh, wow, okay.
This is and I mean, tearjerkers, Jesus, this thing made me cry. It was so sad. Matchstick Girl.
I know. The little sparrow and the dead bird. I mean, absolutely.
So, it's well, Godspeed to them. I hope that.
Well, I don't. I mean, I'd like to think that my older brother didn't really know what Psycho was about when I guess he must have been forced to bring me along when he and his friends went to see it, and I was only about 12. Yeah, and I was well into my 20s before I could take a shower when there wasn't anybody else in the house. So
golly, wow. Yeah. No, I mean that's actually, to me, the most terrifying part of the movie is the end when.
Oh my gosh, yes. Oh.
She walks in and the chair is turned away from her, and man.
Oh, I know. No, we're in this movie theater, and people are screaming. That was as scary as the movie. That people were screaming.
Swinging lamp, light bulb, and it's just swinging back a dirty light bulb.
Yep.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, anyway, I really appreciate it. I can't wait to finish reading the book and reading the rest of them, and
okay.
I'll make sure that you get a copy of this.
and I've got Facebook pages, and then my son is actually in IT. He's a civilian contractor for the Air Force. Very proud of him, and he maintains a website for me that is Katherine Hall-page.org, and people. I really like to hear from people because, again, if you want to be a writer,
I tell notes on the Facebook page, Katherine.
Oh yeah, leave notes on my Facebook page. You can, reach me all sorts of ways because that's the thing about writing is, again, I tell kids, you have to like to be indoors and alone a lot if you want to do this. So I love hearing from people.
All right. And in fact, I just found a page called Katherine Hall-page.org with the whole thing, Body in the Wardrobe, is featured there on sale April 26th. So it's brand new.
Brand new, yes.
And I hope people will go get it and then leave you some notes.
Okay.
It's been delightful talking to you.
Yes, and you too, Jason. And Denver is a very beautiful place. I've been there a couple of times.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, give us a call whenever you're around. We'll go.
Oh, right. I will take you up with that. I want to see the musical that your daughters are coming up with.
Yes, ma'am. All right. I'll see you soon. Bye.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.